My plastic surgeon husband gave his mistress free surgery to look exactly like me, then humiliated me at dinner by joking, "Now I have two of you, guess who's the upgraded model? And, I won't have to miss you when you're out of town." So I scheduled my own appointment to become someone he'd never recognize. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm confused about something," Janet's teacher says, closing the classroom door behind us. "Yesterday a woman who looked exactly like you picked up Janet early for a dentist appointment, but according to our records you were scheduled for this conference. She had the same face, same hair, even the same voice. Janet seemed comfortable with her, but..." Mrs. Patterson trails off, studying my face with growing concern. "Are you feeling all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I grip the back of the tiny plastic chair until my knuckles turn white. The cheerful alphabet border around the classroom walls suddenly feels like it's closing in on me. My voice comes out as a whisper. "What dentist appointment?" Mrs. Patterson pulls out her attendance log, her finger tracing down to yesterday's entries. The woman said there was a dental emergency. She knew Janet's middle name, her favorite snacks, even the story about her loose tooth. "She looked so much like you that I assumed." She stops, realizing what she's implying. "Mrs. Walsh, you really don't know about this." Before we continue with Jennifer's shocking discovery, please subscribe if you believe mothers deserve protection from manipulation and abuse. Your support helps us share stories of women who refuse to be replaced or erased. Now let's see how this nightmare unfolds. The fluorescent lights above us hum loudly as I try to process what I'm hearing. Someone who looks exactly like me came to my daughter's school. Someone who knows intimate details about Janet's life. Someone my 8-year-old was comfortable enough with to leave the building. Did Janet call her mommy? I ask, though I'm terrified of the answer. Mrs. Patterson shifts uncomfortably. Actually, that was the strangest part. Janet seemed confused. She kept looking back and forth between this woman and the school entrance, like she was expecting someone else to show up. When I asked if everything was okay, Janet said, "This is my other mommy. I thought maybe you had a sister or..." My other mommy. The words echo in my head as I stare at Janet's empty desk. Her purple pencil case sits exactly where she left it, next to the drawing she was working on during art time. I pick up the paper and see stick figures. A little girl standing between two identical women, both labeled Mommy in Janet's careful handwriting. One figure has a sad face, the other is smiling. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to know everything," this woman said. "Every detail." The teacher sits down across from me, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. She knew about Janet's reading level, her trouble with math facts, even that she's been having nightmares lately. She asked about Janet's behavior in class, whether she'd been talking about changes at home. Very specific questions, like she was checking on something. Checking on something. Like monitoring the effects of psychological manipulation on a small child. Like making sure her confusion and distress weren't becoming obvious to outsiders who might ask questions. What did she look like exactly? I ask, though I already know the answer will destroy me. Mrs. Patterson hesitates. "Honestly, Mrs. Walsh, she looked like you. Not similar, identical. Same bone structure, same nose, same everything. If I didn't know better, I'd say you had a twin sister. But Janet's school records only list you as her mother, and the way Janet acted." She pauses. Janet seemed scared. Not of the woman but of the situation. Like she didn't understand why there were two of you. The classroom walls feel like they're spinning. I remember Kevin's late nights at the office, the mysterious credit card charges he explained as medical conference expenses, the way he'd been photographing my face constantly over the past 2 years, claiming he wanted to update his professional portfolio with beautiful patient outcomes. "Mrs. Patterson, did this woman sign Janet out properly?" "That's just it, she had identification. A driver's license with your name on it. Jennifer Walsh. Same address, same everything, except the photo showed her face instead of yours. I thought maybe you'd gotten a new license photo taken, but now..." She trails off, clearly disturbed by the implications. My hands shake as I realize the scope of what Kevin has done. He hasn't just created a surgical duplicate of me. He's given her my identity, my legal documents, access to my daughter. This isn't an affair. It's a complete replacement operation. Where did they go after they left school? The woman said they were going to get ice cream before the dentist appointment. Janet loves that place on Maple Street, Rocky Road Creamery. She seemed excited about the ice cream but kept asking when her real mommy would meet them there. Rocky Road Creamery. Where I take Janet every Friday after school. Where she always orders mint chocolate chip in a waffle cone. Where the teenage staff knows us by name and always asks about Janet's latest art projects. Kevin's duplicate has been living my life, going to my places, creating memories with my daughter while I'm sitting here completely unaware that I'm being erased from my own existence. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to call me immediately if anyone else tries to pick up Janet. Anyone. Even if they look like me, even if they have identification. Don't release her to anyone except me, and I mean the me sitting right here, right now. The teacher nods slowly, but I can see doubt creeping into her expression. How does she know I'm the real mother and not the imposter? How does anyone tell the difference between an original and a perfect surgical copy? I stand up to leave, my legs unsteady beneath me. As I reach for the door handle, Mrs. Patterson calls my name. Mrs. Walsh? Janet mentioned something yesterday that I thought was just child imagination, but now I'm wondering. She said she has 2 mommies now and one of them makes Daddy happier. She asked if that meant the sad mommy would have to go away soon. The hallway outside Janet's classroom stretches endlessly in both directions. Other parents are arriving for their conferences, chatting about homework and soccer practice, completely unaware that my world has just shattered into pieces. I walk past them in a daze, wondering how many of them have met my duplicate, how many conversations I've supposedly had that I don't remember, how many places my face has been seen without my knowledge. In the parking lot, I sit in my car and call Kevin's office. The receptionist answers with her usual cheerful greeting. Hi, this is Jennifer Walsh. Is my husband available? Oh, Mrs. Walsh. You just missed him. He left about 20 minutes ago with Carla for their afternoon appointments. Should I have him call you back? Their afternoon appointments. Like they're a team. Like she's his partner in business and life while I'm just the confused woman calling to check up on them. I hang up without responding and stare at my reflection in the rearview mirror. These features Kevin spent years perfecting, these cheekbones he sculpted, this nose he refined. I thought they made me beautiful. Now I understand they made me replaceable. My phone buzzes with a text from Kevin. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. But I know he's not running late. He's living his real life with his real wife. The one he created to be everything I could never be. The upgraded model who doesn't question his late nights, doesn't complain about his criticism, doesn't have stretch marks from carrying his child or laugh lines from 15 years of marriage. I drive home to our empty house, where family photos line the mantelpiece showing our happy life together. Except now I wonder, how many of these recent photos actually show me and how many show her? When did Kevin stop seeing me as his wife and start seeing me as the prototype for something better? Tonight, when Janet asks why Miss Carla from Daddy's office looks like Mommy, I'll have to find words to explain something I don't understand myself. How do you tell your child that her father has created a surgical copy of her mother? How do you maintain your daughter's sense of security when your own identity has been stolen and replicated? But as I sit in our driveway staring at the house where Kevin and I built our life together, I realize something important. He may have copied my face, but he can't copy my soul. He can't duplicate the bond between Janet and me, the 15 years of real memories we've shared, or the fierce protective love that's now burning in my chest. Kevin thinks he's created an upgrade. He's about to discover he's made the biggest mistake of his life. That night, I tuck Janet into bed and listen to her breathing settle into sleep before I make my move. Kevin's home office has always been off limits to me, his sacred space where he reviews patient files and plans surgical procedures. The door creaks as I push it open and I freeze, listening for any sound from our bedroom. Kevin's snoring continues its steady rhythm down the hallway. His computer monitor glows in the darkness as I settle into his leather chair. The password screen appears and I try our anniversary date. Wrong. Janet's birthday. Wrong. Then I remember the combination to his phone that I glimpsed once. The date of his first successful facial reconstruction surgery. The desktop loads. My stomach drops as I see the folder names organized across his screen. Jennifer, original template. Carla version 2.0. Future projects. Enhancement timeline. Each folder contains hundreds of files and I click on the first one with trembling fingers. Photos of my face fill the screen. Not family pictures or casual snapshots, but clinical medical photographs taken from every conceivable angle. My profile from the left, from the right, straight on with measurements drawn across my features like a blueprint. The metadata shows these were taken over the past 3 years, during times I thought Kevin was simply being affectionate with his camera. I scroll through image after image of myself, watching my face change gradually through the timeline of procedures Kevin convinced me I needed. The subtle nose refinement after Janet was born. The cheek implants he said would restore my youthful volume. The lip fillers that made me look more proportional. Each surgery documented with before and after comparisons, notes about technique and satisfaction ratings like I was his practice dummy. But the Carla version 2.0 folder makes my blood run cold. The first photos show a plain woman with kind eyes and an unremarkable face. Then the transformation begins. Kevin has documented every stage of turning Carla into me, but better. Her nose is perfectly symmetrical where mine has a slight bump. Her cheekbones are more pronounced than mine ever were. Her lips are fuller, her jawline sharper. She's not just my duplicate, she's my upgraded version. The clinical notes attached to her photos read like a horror novel written in medical terminology. Patient responds well to template-based reconstruction. Baseline subjects flaws corrected in final design. Voice coaching progressing to match original pitch and inflection. Behavioral modification sessions showing promising results in mimicking target personality traits. Behavioral modification sessions. Kevin hasn't just changed Carla's face. He's been training her to act like me, to speak like me, to become me in every way possible. A sound from upstairs makes me freeze. Janet's voice calling out in her sleep, having another one of her nightmares. I quickly save the photos to a flash drive and close the folders, but not before I see one final document that makes my hands shake. A timeline titled Jennifer Replacement Protocol, with dates stretching into next year, including entries like begin custody preparation, document erratic behavior, and final transition complete. I creep upstairs to check on Janet, finding her tangled in sweaty sheets, mumbling about wrong mommy, and where's my real mommy. Her forehead burns with fever as I smooth her damp hair back. She opens her eyes and looks at me with the desperate relief of a drowning person seeing a life preserver. Mommy, I had this scary dream again. The one where you disappear and the other lady tries to brush my teeth, but she doesn't know I like the bubblegum toothpaste, and she gets mad when I tell her she's doing it wrong. I sit on the edge of her bed and Janet immediately crawls into my lap, pressing her face against my neck and breathing in my scent like she's trying to memorize it. The other lady smells like Daddy's office, she whispers. Like the medicine smell. You smell like home. What else happened in the dream, sweetheart? Janet's voice gets smaller. Daddy said I have to call the other lady mommy now because you went away to the place where broken mommies go to get fixed. But I told him you're not broken and he got the angry face. She looks up at me with eyes full of fear. Mommy, are you broken? Are you going away? The weight of her small body against mine feels precious and fragile. No, baby. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not broken. But even as I say the words, I wonder if they're true. Kevin has spent years convincing me that I needed fixing, that every natural sign of aging or change in my body was a flaw that required surgical correction. He's trained me to see myself through his critical eyes, to value his approval above my own comfort. Maybe I am broken, not physically but psychologically. Maybe that's why he could create a better version so easily. I carry Janet back to her bed and sing her favorite lullaby until she falls asleep again. Then I return to Kevin's office, driven by a need to understand the full scope of his deception. The financial records folder reveals the true cost of Kevin's project. $63,000 in procedures for Carla, charged to credit cards I didn't know existed. Voice coaching sessions at $200 per hour. Personal shopping consultations to help her dress like me. Even a subscription to a service that provides detailed psychological profiles. Kevin had me analyzed by professionals so he could teach Carla to replicate my personality quirks. But the folder labeled insurance documentation shows something even more disturbing. Kevin has been billing Carla's cosmetic procedures as medically necessary reconstructive surgery, claiming she was disfigured in an accident that never happened. He's been committing insurance fraud to fund his obsession with creating the perfect wife. The final folder I discover makes my breath catch in my throat. Previous projects contains photos of other women, other transformations. Sarah Mitchell, his first wife who divorced him 12 years ago. Kevin had documented her improvements too, before she disappeared from his life under circumstances that suddenly seem much more sinister. Below Sarah's photos are files for 3 other women, patients who'd been transformed to look like idealized versions of themselves, then discarded when Kevin moved on to new projects. I'm not his first experiment. I'm just the most successful template he's created so far. A creak from the stairs sends me scrambling to close the files and shut down the computer. Kevin appears in the doorway wearing his pajamas, his hair messy from sleep. Jennifer? What are you doing in here? I force my voice to sound steady. I couldn't sleep. I was looking for something to read. I gesture vaguely at his medical journals on the bookshelf. The conference materials you mentioned. Kevin studies my face carefully, and I wonder if he can see the knowledge burning behind my eyes. After 15 years of marriage, he knows my expressions better than anyone. But then again, he's been teaching someone else to wear those same expressions. You look upset, he says, moving closer. Still thinking about dinner tonight? I told you Carla is just a colleague. The resemblance is purely coincidental. Coincidental. As if surgical reconstruction happens by accident. Janet had another nightmare, I tell him, watching his reaction. She keeps talking about 2 mommies. It's really affecting her. Kevin's expression doesn't change, but I catch a flash of something calculating in his eyes. Children have active imaginations. Maybe you should make an appointment with Dr. Chen. She specializes in childhood anxiety disorders. Of course, he already has a psychiatrist picked out for our daughter. Probably the same one who'll eventually testify that I'm mentally unstable and unfit for custody. Kevin has been planning this replacement operation for years, and I've been too blind to see it happening. I think I'll do that, I agree, and Kevin relaxes slightly. He doesn't realize that I'm agreeing to his suggestion for entirely different reasons than he expects. As he heads back upstairs, Kevin pauses at the doorway. Jennifer? You know I love you exactly as you are, right? You don't need to worry about other women. You're perfect. Perfect. The word he's used to justify every procedure, every change, every gradual erasure of who I used to be. Now I understand that Kevin's version of perfection was never about making me beautiful. It was about making me replaceable. 3 days later, I'm walking across the Riverside Elementary parking lot when I spot the process server. He's young, nervous, checking his paperwork against the school directory posted by the main entrance. My maternal instincts scream danger as I watch him approach the building where Janet's parent-teacher conferences are being held today. I quicken my pace, but I'm too late. The server enters the school just as I reach the front doors, and I follow him down the hallway lined with children's artwork toward Mrs. Patterson's classroom. Through the open door, I can see Kevin already seated at the small conference table, his posture relaxed and confident. He's wearing his best suit, the charcoal gray one he reserves for important medical board meetings. Mrs. Walsh. The server appears beside me in the hallway. Jennifer Walsh? Every parent within earshot turns to stare as he extends a manila envelope toward me. Kevin rises from his chair inside the classroom, and I see Mrs. Patterson's eyes widen with confusion and concern. This is exactly what Kevin wanted. Witnesses to see me being served with legal papers while he sits calmly inside. The picture of a reasonable man dealing with his unstable wife's latest crisis. You've been served, the young man announces loudly enough for the gathering crowd of parents to hear. Divorce proceedings, custody petition, and temporary restraining order. My hands shake as I take the envelope. The hallway feels like it's tilting sideways as I realize Kevin has been planning this public humiliation for weeks. He knew I'd be here for our scheduled conference. He knew other parents would witness this moment. He's turning my daughter's school into a stage for his performance as the long-suffering husband finally taking action against his mentally ill wife. Kevin emerges from the classroom with Mrs. Patterson behind him, her face pale with shock. Jennifer, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, he says, his voice carrying the perfect tone of reluctant sadness. I was hoping we could discuss this privately after the conference, but my attorney insisted on following proper legal procedures. The envelope feels heavy in my hands as I scan the first page. Irreconcilable differences. Breakdown of marriage. Request for immediate primary custody of minor child due to mother's deteriorating mental state and increasingly erratic behavior. Kevin has shared some concerning information about recent changes in your behavior, Mrs. Patterson says quietly, clearly uncomfortable but trying to be supportive. He mentioned you've been having difficulties adjusting to some personal challenges. Personal challenges. Kevin's coded language for my discovery of his surgical affair. I look around at the faces surrounding us in the hallway. Other mothers from Janet's class, a few fathers, the school principal who's emerged from her office to see what's causing the commotion. They're all watching me with a mixture of curiosity and pity, waiting to see how the mentally unstable wife will react to being served divorce papers at her child's school. I think we should finish this conversation somewhere more private, I managed to say, though my voice sounds hollow and distant even to my own ears. Of course, Kevin agrees, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder that feels like a spider crawling across my skin. Mrs. Patterson, would it be possible to use your classroom for a few more minutes? Jennifer needs time to process this information. The teacher nods and ushers the curious parents away from her doorway, leaving Kevin and me alone in the classroom decorated with Janet's artwork and spelling tests. The normalcy of the space. The children's desks, the alphabet chart, the reading corner where Janet loves to curl up with books, makes this legal assault feel even more surreal and twisted. Kevin closes the door and immediately drops his concerned husband facade. You brought this on yourself, Jennifer. I gave you every opportunity to seek help for your paranoid delusions about Carla, but you've become increasingly unstable and hostile. I stare at him across the tiny classroom table where we've sat through years of parent conferences, discussing Janet's progress and future. Now he's using this sacred space to destroy our family while painting himself as the victim of my mental illness. Paranoid delusions? I keep my voice low, mindful that Mrs. Patterson is probably listening outside the door. Kevin, that woman has had surgery to look exactly like me. How is that paranoid? Kevin sighs heavily, the sound of a patient man dealing with his wife's latest breakdown. Carla had reconstructive surgery after a car accident, Jennifer. The fact that you see resemblance where none exists is exactly what concerns me about your mental state. You've become obsessed with an innocent woman who's trying to rebuild her life after trauma. The lie is so smooth, so perfectly rehearsed, that I almost doubt my own memories of the computer files I discovered last night. Kevin has had time to prepare his story, to create plausible explanations for everything I might have seen or suspected. He's been building this narrative for months while I stumbled around in the dark, reacting emotionally to situations he orchestrated. The temporary custody order takes effect immediately, Kevin continues, pulling out his own copy of the legal papers. Janet will stay with me while you get the help you need. Dr. Chin has agreed to evaluate you, and Dr. Morse is prepared to testify about the signs of erotomania and paranoid personality disorder that I've documented over the past several months. Dr. Chin. Dr. Morse. Kevin has assembled a team of medical professionals who will legitimize his version of events with expert testimony. I remember Dr. Morse from medical conferences, a psychiatrist who owes Kevin professional favors. And Dr. Chin, the child psychologist who specializes in finding pathology in normal family dynamics. You've been planning this for a long time, I say, and Kevin doesn't deny it. I've been trying to protect Janet from your increasingly erratic behavior. The late-night searches of my office, the paranoid accusations about my staff, the way you've been interrogating our daughter about my work relationships. Janet is already showing signs of anxiety disorder because of your influence. Anxiety disorder. Janet's nightmares and confusion aren't symptoms of mental illness. They're normal responses to psychological manipulation. But Kevin has twisted even our daughter's distress into evidence against me. I want to see Janet, I say. The restraining order specifically prohibits unsupervised contact until your psychological evaluation is complete. Dr. Chin will be conducting sessions with Janet to assess the extent of damage your paranoid behavior has caused to her emotional development. The clinical language he uses to describe our daughter's confusion makes me understand how completely Kevin has medicalized our family crisis. Janet isn't a traumatized child. She's a patient suffering from exposure to her mother's mental illness. Carla isn't Kevin's surgically created mistress. She's an innocent accident victim who happens to resemble me. I'm not a betrayed wife discovering evidence of systematic manipulation. I'm a paranoid woman suffering from erotic delusions about my husband's professional relationships. Kevin has rewritten our entire reality using medical terminology and expert opinions, creating a version of events where he's the hero trying to save his daughter from his mentally ill wife. And the most terrifying part is how believable his story sounds, even to me. "You can fight this if you want," Kevin says as he stands to leave. "But I have documentation going back 6 months showing your deteriorating mental state. Phone records of your obsessive calls to my office. Security footage of you driving by my practice at all hours. Witness statements from colleagues who've heard your paranoid accusations." He pauses at the classroom door. "Get help, Jennifer. For Janet's sake, if not your own. The sooner you acknowledge your problems and accept treatment, the sooner we can work out a visitation schedule that protects our daughter from further psychological damage." After Kevin leaves, I sit alone in Janet's classroom surrounded by her innocent artwork and wonder how everything went so wrong so quickly. 24 hours ago, I was a concerned mother discovering evidence of my husband's affair. Now I'm a mentally ill woman facing loss of custody, with a restraining order preventing me from protecting my daughter from the very manipulation that's causing her distress. Kevin has turned my discovery of his deception into proof of my insanity. He's weaponized the medical establishment against me. And somewhere across town, Carla is probably practicing bedtime stories in my voice, preparing to become Janet's new mother while I fight for the right to see my own child. The envelope containing my legal doom sits on the tiny table where Janet colors pictures of our family. Soon those pictures might be the only proof that I was ever her mother at all. I spend the next week in a fog, forbidden from seeing Janet while Kevin's legal machine grinds into motion. My attorney, Linda Torres, calls with updates that sound more like death sentences. Kevin's medical colleagues are lining up to testify about my deteriorating mental state. The custody evaluator has already met with Janet twice, asking her leading questions about Mommy's strange behavior. Every day that passes, Kevin's narrative becomes more entrenched in the legal system. On Friday morning, desperation drives me to the most unlikely place: a support group for divorced women meeting in the basement of St. Mary's Community Center. I sit in a circle of metal folding chairs, listening to stories of cheating husbands and custody battles, when a woman named Rebecca Martinez shares something that stops my heart. "My ex-husband was a state senator," she says quietly. "When I threatened to expose his corruption, he had me declared mentally incompetent and tried to take my twins. I lost everything: my identity, my children, my entire life. That's when someone told me about Dr. Okafor." After the meeting, Rebecca pulls me aside. "You have that look," she says, studying my face. "The look of a woman who's been backed into a corner by a man with too much power. How desperate are you? Desperate enough to listen to a stranger talk about doctors who help women disappear. Desperate enough to write down an address in the warehouse district. Desperate enough to drive there the next morning when Kevin takes Janet to breakfast with Carla. Another court-approved family bonding activity that excludes me. The building looks abandoned from the outside, its windows painted black and no visible signage. I check the address 3 times before pushing the unmarked door. A gentle chime announces my entrance into what looks like an upscale medical spa. Soft lighting, classical music, and the faint scent of lavender create an atmosphere that's more sanctuary than clinic. "You must be Jennifer," says a woman emerging from behind an ornate reception desk. She's stunning in an unconventional way. High cheekbones that speak of African heritage, silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, and the confident posture of someone who's rebuilt herself from the ground up. "I'm Dr. Amara Okafor. Rebecca called and said you might need our services." She leads me through a hallway lined with photographs that take my breath away. Before and after images, but not the kind you see in cosmetic surgery advertisements. These show complete transformations, women who've become entirely different people. A blonde soccer mom transformed into a dark-haired professional with different bone structure. A petite redhead who became a tall brunette with a completely altered facial structure. Each photo is labeled with a first name and a year, spanning back over a decade. "These women didn't want to look younger or more beautiful," Dr. Okafor explains, noticing my fascination. "They needed to disappear from husbands who wouldn't let them live. Some were facing death threats. Others, like you, were fighting custody battles against men with unlimited resources and professional connections." Her office feels like a therapist's sanctuary crossed with a medical consultation room. Diplomas from Johns Hopkins and Harvard Medical School hang next to certificates from organizations I've never heard of. underground networks that help trafficking victims, abused women, and others who need to vanish from dangerous situations. Rebecca told me about your husband's surgical manipulation, Dr. Okafor says, settling into a chair across from me. Creating a duplicate wife to replace you. It's more common than you'd think actually. Controlling men who view women as objects to be modified and improved. She opens a thick folder and shows me case studies of similar situations. A plastic surgeon in Dallas who created 3 different versions of his ideal woman using the same template. A orthodontist in Miami who convinced multiple patients to undergo facial reconstruction to match his ex-wife's features. A dermatologist in Seattle who used his practice to create a collection of women who all looked like variations of the same perfect face. The medical community protects its own, Dr. Okafor explains. These men use their credentials and professional networks to discredit their victims. They turn wives' legitimate concerns into evidence of mental illness. They transform children's natural confusion into symptoms of psychological damage caused by unstable mothers. She pulls out a leather-bound album filled with success stories. Women who disappeared from impossible situations and rebuilt their lives with new identities. Former wives who became social workers, lawyers, and activists, using their experiences to help other victims. Mothers who regained custody of their children after proving their ex-husbands were unfit from positions of power and credibility. The transformation process takes approximately 6 months, Dr. Okafor explains. We don't just change your appearance. We create a complete new identity with legitimate documentation, professional credentials, and employment history. Many of our clients choose careers in social services, law enforcement, or child welfare. Positions where their personal experience with manipulation and abuse becomes a professional asset. I study the photos of transformed women, each one radiating confidence and strength that wasn't visible in their before pictures. These aren't victims hiding from their abusers. They're warriors who've reinvented themselves to fight from positions of power. What about the children? I ask, thinking of Janet's frightened face in that classroom yesterday. Dr. Okafor opens another section of the album showing reunion photos. Mothers embracing children they haven't seen in months or years. Families rebuilding with new names and new faces but the same love. Temporary separation is the hardest part, she admits. But many of our clients regain custody once they can fight from positions where their abusers can't discredit them. A respected social worker's testimony carries more weight than a mentally ill ex-wife's accusations. She shows me documentation from successful custody reversals. Women who disappeared as victims and returned as professionals with the credentials and credibility to expose their ex-husband's manipulation. Former wives who became child advocates specifically qualified to identify and combat the exact tactics their abusers had used against them. The cost is significant, Dr. Okafor continues. $200,000 for complete transformation and identity establishment. But we offer payment plans and many clients find ways to access hidden assets their husbands don't know about. I think about my grandmother's jewelry collection, the life insurance policy from my parents' estate, the savings account I opened with my maiden name years ago as a safety net I never thought I'd need. Assets Kevin knows nothing about because he's never seen me as someone capable of independent financial planning. How long would I have to stay away from Janet? Usually 8 to 12 months for complete healing and identity establishment. Long enough for your husband to become comfortable with his victory, to stop looking over his shoulder for threats. Long enough for you to build credibility in your new profession and position yourself to investigate his fitness as a parent from the inside. 8 to 12 months without my daughter. The thought makes my chest physically ache. But I look at the reunion photos again, seeing the joy on children's faces when they're finally safe with mothers who are strong enough to protect them. What if I decide to do this? I ask. Dr. Okafor smiles and I see steel beneath her gentleness. Then you become someone your husband never saw coming. Someone with the power to expose him, save your daughter, and help other women escape the same trap. You become the person you were always meant to be before he started reshaping you into his fantasy. She hands me a business card with only a phone number printed on it. Take time to think about it. But remember, playing by his rules means accepting defeat. Changing the game means you might actually win. Driving home, I pass Janet's school and see Kevin's Mercedes in the pickup line. My daughter is probably inside right now, confused about why mommy didn't come to get her. wondering if the scary legal papers mean she'll never see her real mother again. I pull into an empty parking space and watch Kevin help Janet into his car, then drive away toward a life that doesn't include me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I don't feel helpless. I feel dangerous. Kevin thinks he's won by turning my maternal instincts against me. He's about to learn that a mother's love can transform into something far more powerful than he ever imagined possible. I call Dr. Okafor's number 3 days later, my hands shaking as I dial. The decision feels like jumping off a cliff with no guarantee of landing safely, but staying means watching Kevin slowly erase me from Janet's life while I'm powerless to stop him. I want to disappear, I tell her when she answers. Then let's make that happen, she replies without hesitation. Can you be here tomorrow morning at 6? We'll need to move quickly before your husband realizes you're planning anything beyond accepting his treatment suggestions. The next morning, I drive to Dr. Okafor's clinic while Kevin thinks I'm attending my first mandated therapy session with Dr. Chen. The irony isn't lost on me. While Kevin's chosen psychiatrist is preparing to diagnose me with delusions, I'm taking concrete steps to turn those supposed delusions into reality. Dr. Okafor leads me to a consultation room equipped with advanced 3D imaging technology. We'll start by documenting your current appearance in precise detail, she explains, positioning me in front of cameras that capture my face from dozens of angles. Then we'll design your new identity based on genetic possibilities, what you might have looked like if you'd been born to different parents, lived in a different climate, experienced different life stresses. The imaging software creates multiple versions of potential new faces for me. Some are subtle changes that would make me unrecognizable to Kevin but still fundamentally similar to who I am now. Others are radical transformations that would turn me into someone completely different. Dr. Okafor guides me through the options while explaining the medical procedures required for each level of change. Bone restructuring through strategic implants and selective reduction, she says, pointing to areas of my face on the computer screen. Melanin therapy to darken your skin tone permanently. Vocal cord modification to change your speaking voice. These aren't cosmetic improvements, they're survival modifications. I choose a transformation that will make me unrecognizable while keeping me human. Darker skin that suggests Latin heritage. Stronger bone structure that conveys authority rather than vulnerability. A voice that carries confidence instead of the apologetic tone Kevin trained me to use. The process will take 5 months, Dr. Okafor explains as we schedule the first surgery. You'll stay here during recovery periods and we'll use the mental health retreat cover story to explain your absence. I have contacts at Pine Valley who'll provide authentic documentation of your stay there, including therapy session notes and progress reports that will satisfy your husband's legal team. The first surgery happens on a Tuesday. I wake up in a private recovery room with bandages covering half my face, my mouth too swollen to speak clearly. Dr. Okafor checks on me every few hours, monitoring for complications while explaining what she's accomplished. Cheekbone augmentation and jawline reconstruction, she says, showing me surgical photos. When the swelling goes down, you'll have the bone structure of someone who's never been criticized for being too soft or too feminine. Elena Rodriguez, my identity coach, visits during the second week of recovery. She's a former theater actress who reinvented herself after escaping an abusive director who controlled every aspect of her career and personal life. Voice training starts as soon as your throat heals, she tells me, demonstrating the southwestern accent that will become part of Maria Gonzalez's identity. But first we work on how you hold yourself. Kevin trained you to take up less space, to apologize for existing. Maria Gonzalez apologizes for nothing. Between surgeries, I study social work textbooks with an intensity one haven't felt since college. Child development psychology, family systems theory, legal procedures for custody evaluation. Knowledge that will make me genuinely qualified for the role I'm preparing to play. But more than that, I'm learning the scientific language to describe what Kevin has done to our family. Parental alienation. Psychological manipulation. Systematic abuse disguised as medical expertise. Dr. Okafor performs the melanin therapy during my 3rd month of treatment. This will permanently darken your skin tone, she warns before the injections begin. There's no reversing this particular procedure. You're committing to becoming someone ethnically different from who you were born to be. I watch my reflection change week by week as the melanin takes effect. My pale Irish complexion deepens to a warm bronze that speaks of Latin American heritage. Combined with my new bone structure, the effect is stunning. I look like someone who was born confident rather than someone who learned to shrink herself to fit a man's expectations. Elena works with me daily on voice modification exercises. Your natural speaking voice is higher and softer because Kevin preferred women who sounded young and uncertain, she explains during one session. Maria Gonzalez speaks from her diaphragm. She doesn't uptalk or end statements like questions. She doesn't apologize before expressing opinions. The vocal cord surgery happens in month 4, performed under local anesthesia so I can test my new voice immediately. When I speak for the first time after the procedure, the sound that emerges is deeper, richer, carrying authority I never knew I possessed. It's still recognizably human, still feminine, but completely different from the tentative voice Kevin shaped through years of subtle criticism. How do you feel? Dr. Okafor asks. Powerful, I answer, and the word resonates in my chest in a way it never could before. During my final month of transformation, I practice living as Maria Gonzalez. I wear clothes that fit my new confident posture. Structured blazers instead of the soft cardigans Kevin preferred. Heels that make me taller rather than flats that kept me diminutive. Colors that command attention rather than the pastels that helped me blend into the background. The hardest part of my training involves learning to suppress my maternal instincts when discussing Janet's case. Dr. Okafor arranges mock interviews where I practice reviewing her file with professional detachment while my heart screams to hold my daughter and comfort her fears. Channel that protective fury into clinical determination, she coaches. Maria Gonzalez doesn't love Janet Walsh. She's simply committed to protecting all children from manipulative parents. I complete my social work certification through Arizona State University's online program, finishing coursework that normally takes 2 years in 8 intensive months. My thesis focuses on custody manipulation by medical professionals, drawing on research I conduct during my recovery periods. The academic work gives me legitimate credentials while allowing me to study Kevin's tactics from a professional perspective. You're ready, Dr. Okafor tells me as we review my new documentation. Maria Gonzalez has a master's degree in social work, 3 years of experience with Phoenix Family Services, and glowing professional references from supervisors who are actually other transformed women now working in child welfare across the country. Your backstory explains your specialized knowledge of professional manipulation, your passion for protecting children, and your particular expertise in cases involving medical professionals. I look at myself in the mirror for the final time as Jennifer Walsh. The woman staring back has dark skin, strong cheekbones, and eyes that hold steady confidence instead of nervous uncertainty. My voice carries authority when I speak. My posture suggests someone who's never been told to make herself smaller. Kevin destroyed Jennifer Walsh, I tell my reflection. But he created something much more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything necessary to destroy him. The next morning, I leave Dr. Okafor's clinic as Maria Gonzalez, carrying credentials that will get me hired by Child Protective Services and positioned to investigate Kevin's fitness as a parent. I've spent $200,000 and 5 months of agony to become someone Kevin has never met. Now the real work begins. 6 months later, I walk through the doors of the County Child Protective Services building as Maria Gonzalez, carrying a briefcase filled with credentials Kevin could never imagine his submissive wife possessing. My new supervisor, Sandra Williams, greets me with genuine warmth as she reviews my impressive resume from Phoenix Family Services. We're lucky to have someone with your specialized experience, Sandra says, leading me to my new office. Cases involving medical professionals who manipulate the system are particularly challenging. Your background in identifying professional abuse patterns will be invaluable here. My desk faces a window overlooking the elementary school where Janet attends 3rd grade now. I can see the playground where she used to laugh during recess before Kevin's manipulation turned her into an anxious child afraid of losing her mother. The proximity isn't coincidence. I requested this assignment specifically to stay close to my daughter while I build the case that will save her. Your first case is interesting, Sandra continues, placing a thick file on my desk. The Walsh family. Dr. Kevin Walsh filed for emergency custody modification 6 months ago, claiming his ex-wife abandoned their daughter to enter psychiatric treatment. but the child's school counselor has concerns about the father's behavior and the introduction of a new female figure who's causing identity confusion. I open Janet's case file with hands that appear steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. The clinical language describes my daughter as an 8-year-old female exhibiting severe anxiety, sleep disturbances, and confusion regarding maternal identity following parental separation. Attached school reports document her declining academic performance, social withdrawal, and disturbing artwork depicting split identity themes. Reading about Janet's suffering through professional eyes gives me a different perspective on Kevin's cruelty. These aren't just the actions of an unfaithful husband, they're systematic psychological abuse tactics designed to destroy a child's sense of security and identity. The documentation patterns match textbook cases of parental alienation that I studied during my accelerated certification program. My phone buzzes with a text from Kevin's number. CPS worker coming to house today for routine check. Make sure Janet understands this is normal and nothing to worry about. He's messaging his ex-wife Jennifer, not knowing that Maria Gonzalez is reading his instructions about how to prepare for her own investigation. I arrive at Kevin's house promptly at 2 o'clock, driving the reliable Honda Civic that matches my new identity as a dedicated social worker rather than the luxury SUV Jennifer Walsh used to navigate her privileged suburban life. The house looks smaller somehow, or maybe I've grown larger during my transformation. The perfectly manicured lawn and expensive landscaping seem excessive now, evidence of resources that could have been spent on genuine family welfare instead of maintaining appearances. Kevin answers the door wearing his most charming smile, the one he used when courting potential patients for expensive procedures. Ms. Gonzalez, thank you for coming. I know these visits are routine, but I want to assure you that Janet is thriving since her mother entered treatment. Carla appears behind him, and seeing my surgical duplicate face-to-face for the first time since my transformation creates a surreal moment where I'm looking at my former self through completely different eyes. She's wearing one of my old dresses, the blue floral one I loved before Kevin convinced me it made me look matronly. On her, it looks different somehow, like a costume rather than clothing chosen by someone who actually liked the pattern. This is Carla Morrison, Kevin says, his hand possessively resting on her lower back. She's been helping with Janet's adjustment during this difficult transition. Carla has a natural way with children. I study Carla's face with professional detachment, noting the surgical precision of her features and the way she keeps glancing at Kevin for approval before speaking. Her movements are careful, calculated, like someone performing a role she's not entirely comfortable with yet. Hello, Ms. Gonzalez, Carla says, extending her hand. Dr. Walsh has told me so much about the wonderful work you do protecting children. Her voice has the same tentative quality mine used to have, the sound of a woman who's been trained to defer to male authority. But underneath the careful politeness I detect something else. Fear. She's terrified of making a mistake that might displease Kevin. Where is Janet? I ask, consulting my official clipboard. Upstairs in her room, Kevin answers. She's been napping more lately. The stress of the custody situation has been exhausting for her. I follow Kevin up the stairs I climbed thousands of times as his wife, now seeing our home through the analytical eyes of a child welfare investigator. Janet's bedroom door is decorated with new artwork, drawings that show 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Miss Carla, and me, with no mother figure visible anywhere. The absence of maternal representation in her recent art speaks volumes about Kevin's success in erasing me from her psychological landscape. Janet sits on her bed surrounded by dolls, but she's not playing. She's arranging them in careful lines, sorting them by hair color and facial features with the obsessive precision of a child trying to make sense of identity confusion. When she sees me enter her room, her face lights up with hope. "Are you here to find my mommy?" she asks immediately, abandoning her dolls to approach me. "Daddy says she went to the fixing place, but she's been gone for a really long time and I think maybe she got lost." Kevin steps into the room behind me, his presence immediately making Janet's shoulders tense. "Janet, this is Ms. Gonzalez from the county office. She's here to make sure you're happy and healthy." I kneel down to Janet's eye level, fighting every maternal instinct screaming at me to gather her into my arms and tell her that mommy never left, that mommy transformed herself into someone strong enough to save her. Instead, I maintain professional composure while my heart breaks seeing the changes in my daughter's face. She's thinner than she was 6 months ago, with dark circles under her eyes that speak of too many sleepless nights. Can you tell me about your family, Janet? I ask gently. Janet glances nervously at Kevin before answering. I live with Daddy and Miss Carla now. Mommy went away because she was sick in her brain, but Miss Carla takes care of me instead. She tries to brush my hair like Mommy used to, but she doesn't know I don't like when it pulls. The carefully coached response reveals Kevin's manipulation tactics perfectly. He's trained Janet to repeat his narrative while unconsciously expressing her dissatisfaction with Carla's inadequate attempts to replace me. Every word my daughter speaks provides evidence of psychological abuse disguised as loving care. Do you miss your mommy? I ask, knowing the question will make Kevin uncomfortable but needing Janet's genuine response for my documentation. Janet's eyes fill with tears despite Kevin's warning glare. Miss Carla says I shouldn't miss Mommy because that makes Daddy sad. But sometimes I forget and call Miss Carla the wrong name, and then Daddy has to remind me about using my inside voice about family things. Inside voice about family things. Kevin has taught our daughter to suppress her natural feelings and questions about her mother's disappearance. He's turned her authentic emotions into secrets she's not allowed to express openly. I spend another hour conducting my official evaluation, photographing Janet's living space and documenting Kevin's responses to standard questions about parenting responsibilities and child welfare. Every answer he gives reveals his shallow understanding of Janet's actual needs versus his assumptions about what children require from their caregivers. When Carla tries to demonstrate her maternal skills by helping Janet with homework, I watch my daughter politely accept assistance while clearly missing the way I used to make learning fun through games and silly voices. Carla knows the mechanics of helping with schoolwork, but she doesn't understand Janet's learning style or the encouragement techniques that actually motivate her. As I prepare to leave, Janet tugs on my jacket. Ms. Gonzalez, when you find my mommy, will you tell her I still have her goodnight song memorized? I sing it to myself every night so I don't forget. The song I made up when she was 3 years old, about brave little girls who can overcome any scary thing. Janet has been keeping our connection alive through that simple melody, maintaining hope that her real mother will return someday. I'll make sure she knows, I promise, and Janet smiles for the first time since I arrived. Walking back to my car, I feel the weight of my new power and the burden of my impossible situation. I'm closer to my daughter than I've been in months, but I can't comfort her or reveal myself without destroying the mission that could save her permanently. Kevin waves goodbye from his front porch, completely unaware that his ex-wife just completed her first official investigation of his parenting. He thinks he's won by isolating me from Janet through legal manipulation. He has no idea the war has just begun. Over the following weeks, my visits to Kevin's house become a carefully choreographed dance of professional observation and hidden maternal connection. During my third official visit, I notice Janet has begun arranging her stuffed animals in deliberate patterns across her bedroom floor. At first glance, it looks like typical child's play, but when I study the arrangement more closely, I realize she's spelled out help, using her favorite teddy bears. Janet catches my eye and glances toward her closet, where I discover a small notebook hidden behind her winter coats. Inside, she's drawn picture after picture of the same scene. A little girl standing between two identical women, with arrows pointing to one labeled real, and the other labeled pretend. The drawings show increasing sophistication as Janet develops her own system for documenting the psychological abuse she can't articulate in words. Does anyone else know about your drawings? I ask quietly, and Janet shakes her head vigorously. Miss Carla found one once and showed Daddy. He got the angry face and told me stories about mommies should only be happy stories. So now I hide them where the pretend mommy doesn't look. Janet's instinctive understanding that Carla isn't truly her mother despite their physical resemblance proves that Kevin's manipulation hasn't completely destroyed her connection to reality. My daughter knows something is fundamentally wrong with her current situation, and she's finding ways to communicate that knowledge to the one adult who seems to listen without judgment. During my fourth visit, I witness Kevin's professional facade beginning to crack under pressure. His phone rings constantly during our interview, and I overhear heated conversations with colleagues about patient complaints and surgical complications. When Dr. Susan Bradley calls about a botched rhinoplasty that's requiring corrective surgery, Kevin becomes visibly agitated. I don't understand why everyone's suddenly questioning my techniques, he snaps at Carla after ending the call. I've been performing these procedures successfully for 15 years. But Carla's expression suggests she's been hearing similar complaints frequently. She flinches when Kevin slams his phone down, and I notice how she instinctively moves to shield Janet from witnessing his outburst. Despite being Kevin's creation, Carla's protective instincts toward my daughter seem genuine. I schedule follow-up interviews with Kevin's medical practice staff, using my official CPS credentials to ask questions about Dr. Walsh's professional behavior and patient interactions. Nurse Margaret Foster, who's worked with Kevin for 8 years, speaks carefully but reveals concerning patterns. Dr. Walsh has always been particular about patient appearance, she admits during our private conversation. But lately he's been making unusual comments, comparing patients to former patients, suggesting procedures that seem unnecessary. Last week he spent 20 minutes photographing a rhinoplasty patient from angles that weren't medically relevant. Margaret shows me Kevin's recent patient files, where I discover he's been documenting women's faces with the same obsessive detail I found in his computer folders at home. Photos from multiple angles, measurements, notes about improvement potential that read more like artistic critiques than medical assessments. Has anyone reported these concerns to the medical board? I ask. Margaret shifts uncomfortably. Dr. Walsh has powerful connections. Staff members who've raised questions about his methods have found themselves transferred to different departments or let go for unrelated reasons. We all have families to support. Her fear reveals the scope of Kevin's influence within the medical community. He's not just manipulating his personal life. He's using his professional reputation to silence anyone who might expose his dangerous obsessions. My investigation into Janet's school records uncovers Kevin's systematic campaign to control the narrative about our family's dissolution. Principal Roberts shows me emails where Kevin detailed my supposed mental breakdown, providing specific examples of my paranoid behavior that align perfectly with his legal strategy. Dr. Walsh has been very proactive about keeping us informed, Principal Roberts explains. He wanted to ensure we could provide appropriate support for Janet during this difficult time. He's also arranged for a child psychologist to visit the school monthly to monitor Janet's adjustment. Dr. Sarah Chin, Kevin's hand-picked therapist who specializes in finding pathology where none exists. I request copies of her school visit reports and discover she's been asking Janet leading questions designed to extract statements that support Kevin's custody case. According to Dr. Chen's notes, Janet has expressed concerning attachment to absent mother figure and resistance to accepting positive female role model in home environment. The clinical language transforms Janet's natural grief about losing her mother into evidence that she's been psychologically damaged by my abandonment. During my next home visit, I observe the dynamic between Kevin and Carla more carefully. Their relationship operates like a medical procedure, Kevin making constant adjustments to Carla's behavior, appearance, and responses while she accepts his corrections with the compliance of a patient rather than the equality of a partner. "Carla, your posture is slouching again," Kevin says during dinner, causing her to immediately straighten her spine. "Remember what we practiced about confident body language." Janet watches this interaction with the sharp awareness of a child who's learned to read adult moods for survival. She knows that Carla's compliance isn't natural affection but trained behavior, and she responds to this artificial maternal figure with polite distance rather than genuine warmth. After dinner, I find Carla alone in the kitchen loading the dishwasher with mechanical precision. When I compliment her efficiency, she looks surprised, as if praise for her own actions is unexpected. "Dr. Walsh is very particular about household management," she says quietly. "He's taught me the proper way to organize things so Janet feels secure and consistent." The proper way. As if there's only one correct method for loading dishes or arranging a home, and Kevin is the authority on domestic perfection. I realize Carla has no autonomy in this house. She's following Kevin's detailed instructions about how to live, how to interact with Janet, even how to perform basic household tasks. During a moment when Kevin steps outside to take a phone call, Carla's careful composure slips slightly. She stares at her reflection in the kitchen window, touching her surgically altered cheekbones with the same confused expression I used to have when Kevin convinced me to change parts of myself. "Sometimes I don't recognize myself," she admits quietly. Dr. Walsh says that's normal after major reconstructive surgery, but it's been 8 months now, and I still feel like I'm wearing someone else's face. Someone else's face. My face. But she doesn't know that yet. The procedures were necessary after your accident? I ask, testing Kevin's cover story. Carla hesitates just long enough to reveal the lie. Yes, the accident. Dr. Walsh says I'm lucky he was able to restore my appearance so completely. He says I look even better than I did before. But her tone suggests doubt rather than gratitude. She's beginning to question whether the accident story makes sense, whether the extensive procedures were really necessary, whether Kevin's version of events aligns with her fragmented memories of what actually happened. That night I compile my growing evidence file. Janet's hidden artwork showing identity confusion. Kevin's declining professional performance documented by concerned colleagues. Carla's obvious discomfort with her surgical transformation and subordinate role in Kevin's household. Staff members' fears about reporting Kevin's inappropriate behavior. Each piece of evidence strengthens my case, but more importantly, each visit reveals that Kevin's perfect replacement family is built on manipulation, fear, and psychological control rather than genuine love and security. Janet isn't thriving with her new maternal figure. She's surviving by suppressing her natural instincts and authentic emotions. The war Kevin started by creating surgical duplicates is turning into his own destruction. He just doesn't know it yet. My success with other custody cases builds quickly as word spreads through the family court system about the new social worker who isn't intimidated by wealthy professionals or their legal teams. Judge Patricia Morrison requests my involvement in the Henderson case, where a prominent attorney is using his legal connections to discredit his ex-wife's claims of emotional abuse. Maria, I need someone who can see through professional manipulation, Judge Morrison tells me during our pretrial meeting. Too many custody evaluators get swept up in credentials and reputation rather than focusing on what's actually happening to the children involved. Within 3 months, I've successfully exposed manipulation tactics in 6 different cases involving doctors, lawyers, and business executives who used their professional status to control custody outcomes. My testimony helps Judge Morrison award custody to mothers who were being painted as unstable while their children suffered emotional abuse disguised as parental discipline. Each victory builds my reputation as the social worker who specializes in cases where traditional evidence doesn't capture the full scope of psychological manipulation. Family attorneys begin requesting my involvement specifically when they suspect professional abuse but can't prove it through conventional documentation. During my regular visits with Janet, she develops increasingly sophisticated ways of communicating her distress without alerting Kevin to our secret connection. She arranges her art supplies in patterns that spell out words only I would recognize, placing her red crayon, blue marker, and yellow pencil in sequence to spell Arby, our code for remember, baby, yes, from bedtime stories I used to tell her about brave princesses who never gave up hope. Janet's artwork evolves from simple expressions of confusion to complex emotional landscapes that document Kevin's psychological manipulation with stunning clarity. She draws herself as a tiny figure trapped in a maze of mirrors, surrounded by identical faces that all claim to be her mother. Another drawing shows a little girl holding a magnifying glass, searching through a crowd of identical women for the one with the real heart. Miss Maria, can I ask you something? Janet says during our 6th visit, pulling me aside while Kevin and Carla argue about dinner preparations in the kitchen. If someone's daddy makes them pretend to be happy when they're really sad, is that lying? And if it's lying, who gets in trouble, the daddy or the little girl? Her question reveals the impossible position Kevin has placed her in. Janet knows she's being forced to perform happiness and acceptance of Carla, but she's been conditioned to believe that expressing her authentic feelings will result in punishment or abandonment. I help her understand that children are never responsible for adult problems and that feeling confused or sad about family changes is completely normal. You're allowed to feel however you feel, I tell her. Feelings aren't right or wrong. They're just information about what's happening around us. Janet's face brightens with relief, as if someone has finally given her permission to trust her own emotional responses instead of the manufactured reactions Kevin demands from her. Meanwhile, Kevin's professional world begins collapsing under the weight of his divided attention and escalating paranoia. During my interview with Dr. Michelle Park, his senior partner, she reveals that Kevin's surgical complication rate has tripled over the past 6 months. Kevin has always been meticulous, Dr. Park explains, clearly struggling with loyalty to her colleague versus concern for patient safety. But lately he's been distracted during procedures, making basic errors that should never happen with someone of his experience level. Last week he nicked a facial nerve during a routine rhinoplasty because he was reading text messages during surgery. The patient, Mrs. Dorothy Chen, now has permanent partial facial paralysis that will require additional corrective procedures and likely result in a significant malpractice lawsuit. Kevin's explanation to his partners was that the patient moved unexpectedly, but surgical video recordings show Kevin looking at his phone during the critical moment when precision was essential. We're considering asking Kevin to take a sabbatical, Dr. Park admits. His personal situation seems to be affecting his professional judgment, and we can't risk patient safety while he works through whatever's happening at home. I document everything, building a comprehensive picture of a man whose obsession with controlling women's appearances has begun affecting his ability to perform his professional duties safely. The pattern suggests that Kevin's manipulation extends far beyond his personal relationships into his medical practice, where vulnerable patients trust him with their faces and their futures. During my 7th visit to Kevin's house, I engineer a private conversation with Carla by suggesting we review Janet's educational needs while Kevin takes a business call. I've prepared for this moment carefully, knowing that Carla's growing doubts about her situation might make her receptive to questions that help her see Kevin's manipulation more clearly. How long have you been working for Dr. Walsh? I ask, using language that subtly reinforces her employee status rather than romantic partner role. 3 years, Carla replies, then corrects herself quickly. I mean, I've been part of the practice for 3 years, but Kevin and I have been together personally for about 18 months. The timeline reveals that Kevin began transforming Carla long before our marriage showed any signs of serious problems. This wasn't a rebound relationship following marital difficulties. It was a premeditated replacement operation that Kevin executed while still married to me. Janet mentioned that you've been helping with her care since her mother entered treatment. I continue carefully. That must be challenging, stepping into a maternal role with a child who's been through trauma. Carla's facade cracks slightly. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a part one don't understand. Janet looks at me like she's expecting me to do things differently, to know things about her that I don't know. Kevin gets frustrated when I can't anticipate her needs the way her real mother could. Real mother. The phrase slips out before Carla can catch herself, revealing that despite Kevin's insistence on calling her Janet's new mother figure, she knows she's a substitute rather than a replacement. Have you considered that Janet might benefit from maintaining some connection to her biological mother? I suggest. Even supervised visits might help reduce her anxiety about the family changes. Kevin says Jennifer is too unstable for contact. Carla responds automatically, but her tone suggests doubt. He's shown me examples of her erratic behavior, but sometimes. She trails off, glancing toward the living room where Kevin's voice carries through his phone conversation. Sometimes what? I prompt gently. Sometimes the examples don't match the woman Janet describes when she talks about missing her mommy. Janet's stories make her mother sound loving and creative and fun. But Kevin's evidence makes her sound dangerous and unpredictable. It's hard to understand how the same person could be both. Carla's growing awareness that Kevin's narrative doesn't align with Janet's authentic memories gives me hope that she might be willing to question other aspects of their relationship. If I can help her see the truth about Kevin's manipulation, she could become my most powerful ally in exposing his systematic abuse. That evening I compile my expanding evidence file with renewed determination. Janet's sophisticated documentation of her emotional distress. Kevin's professional decline and surgical errors. Carla's increasing doubt about her role and identity. Staff members' growing concerns about patient safety and Kevin's erratic behavior. Each thread of evidence strengthens the web I'm weaving around Kevin's carefully constructed lies. He's so focused on maintaining control over Janet and Carla that he doesn't notice how his desperation is providing me with exactly the ammunition I need to destroy his credibility and save my daughter. The network of allies I've built through my professional success gives me confidence that when the time comes to reveal my true identity, I'll have the support and credibility necessary to make people listen. Kevin may have won the first battle by turning my maternal instincts against me, but he's about to discover that he's been fighting someone much more dangerous than the submissive wife he thought he'd defeated. Maria Gonzalez has resources, allies, and evidence that Jennifer Walsh never could have gathered. And Maria Gonzalez is ready to use every weapon at her disposal to save Janet and destroy the man who thought he could replace us both. The breakthrough comes during Kevin's deposition, 3 months into the formal custody proceedings. His attorney, Robert Sterling, smugly presents what he believes is evidence of my mental instability. A series of emails Kevin claims I sent him during my psychiatric treatment at Pine Valley. But when Sterling reads the messages aloud, he accidentally includes email headers that reveal the true sender, Kevin himself, writing as Jennifer, to create evidence of my supposed deteriorating mental state. Your Honor, Linda Torres stands immediately. These emails were sent from Dr. Walsh's personal computer, not from Pine Valley Mental Health Center. The metadata shows they originated from his home office IP address during times when his ex-wife was supposedly in residential treatment. Kevin's face goes white as he realizes his attorney has just exposed his evidence fabrication. But Sterling, trying to salvage the situation, makes an even bigger mistake. He opens Kevin's laptop to demonstrate the email origin, inadvertently displaying file folders labeled Jennifer Replacement Timeline and Patient Psychological Profiles, Personal Use. The court clerk captures screenshots before Sterling can close the laptop, and Judge Morrison orders a forensic examination of Kevin's computer. What emerges over the following week destroys Kevin's credibility completely. Email correspondence with other plastic surgeons discussing wife modification protocols. Research into legal strategies for removing children from mothers who resist their husbands' improvement projects. Detailed plans spanning 3 years for replacing me systematically while maintaining legal custody of Janet. Most damaging are emails between Kevin and Dr. Marcus Reed in Beverly Hills, where Kevin writes, "The original model has served her purpose but lacks the compliance necessary for optimal family functioning." Version 2.0 shows marked improvement in responsiveness to guidance and willingness to maintain desired appearance standards. Transition timeline suggests 18 months for complete replacement while minimizing legal complications. Judge Morrison's expression hardens as she reads Kevin's clinical descriptions of our marriage and his surgical manipulation of Carla. Dr. Walsh, these communications suggest premeditated psychological abuse rather than marital difficulties leading to separation. We're expanding this case to include criminal investigation. Kevin's attorney requests an immediate recess, but the damage is irreversible. The court-ordered forensic examination reveals years of evidence showing Kevin's systematic destruction of women's identities, his use of medical procedures to control behavior, and his detailed planning to eliminate me from Janet's life while avoiding legal consequences. 2 weeks later, Janet gives her testimony in Judge Morrison's private chambers, with only a court-appointed child advocate present to ensure her comfort and safety. I watch through closed-circuit video as my daughter courageously describes her confusion and fear with heartbreaking honesty. "Daddy takes pictures of me and Miss Carla together all the time," Janet tells the advocate, her voice small but steady. "He makes us stand the same way and smile the same way, and then he shows the pictures to people and says we look like a real family. But Miss Carla's hugs feel different from Mommy's hugs, and she doesn't know the right way to braid my hair or which bedtime stories I like best." Janet describes how Kevin coaches her responses about missing her mother, teaching her to say that she's adjusting well and bonding with her new maternal figure whenever adults ask about her feelings. She reveals that Kevin has threatened to send her to boarding school if she continues crying for her real mommy or asking when I'm coming home. "Sometimes Daddy gets the angry face when I forget and call Miss Carla the wrong name," Janet continues. "He tells me that Miss Carla works very hard to take care of me and that missing Mommy makes everyone sad. So I try to remember to be happy, but it's hard when I have this scared feeling inside all the time." The child advocate's report describes Janet's testimony as compelling evidence of parental coaching and psychological manipulation designed to force acceptance of maternal replacement figure. Judge Morrison orders immediate psychiatric evaluation of Kevin by an independent expert rather than his chosen colleagues. Meanwhile, the medical board investigation into Kevin's practice uncovers a pattern of misconduct that extends far beyond his personal manipulation of women. Former patient Lisa Wong comes forward with evidence that Kevin convinced her to undergo facial reconstruction after her divorce, claiming her ex-husband's criticism had damaged her self-esteem and that surgical correction would help her heal emotionally. Dr. Walsh took detailed photos of my ex-husband's new girlfriend, Lisa testifies. He said he could make me look better than her, more attractive and youthful. But after the surgery, I realized he was using me to experiment with techniques he wanted to try on someone else. I was practice for his real project. Lisa's testimony connects to similar stories from other former patients who describe Kevin photographing them obsessively, comparing their results to reference materials he kept on his computer, and making inappropriate comments about creating improved versions of natural features. The medical board discovers that Kevin has been using his practice as a laboratory for perfecting surgical manipulation techniques rather than providing ethical patient care. Dr. Patricia Morse, Kevin's psychiatrist ally, withdraws her support when she realizes her own professional reputation is at risk. During her interview with the medical board, she admits that she never actually examined me but agreed to provide testimony about my mental state based solely on Kevin's descriptions of my behavior. Dr. Walsh presented what seemed like legitimate concerns about his wife's psychological stability, Dr. Morse explains to investigators. But I'm realizing now that I should have insisted on conducting my own evaluation rather than relying on his clinical observations. Her admission demolishes Kevin's expert testimony foundation and raises questions about how many other professionals he's manipulated into supporting his false narratives about the women in his life. Carla's transformation from accomplice to ally accelerates as she discovers more evidence of Kevin's systematic manipulation. She finds a hidden camera in their bedroom that's been recording their intimate moments, and she realizes Kevin has been documenting her responses to his controlling behavior just as he documented mine. He's been studying me like a lab experiment, Carla tells me during a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop across town. I found notebooks where he rates my compliance on a scale of 1 to 10, compares my reactions to something he calls baseline measurements, and plans modifications to my behavior based on his observations. She provides me with copies of Kevin's notes about her training progress, including detailed records of how he's conditioned her to respond to criticism, accept physical adjustments to her appearance, and suppress any resistance to his control. The documentation reads like a manual for creating the perfect submissive partner through surgical and psychological manipulation. I have recordings too, Carla admits, producing her phone. Kevin doesn't know I started documenting our conversations after I found those files. He said things about planning to eliminate Janet's memories of her real mother, about making me so perfect that no court would choose the damaged original over the enhanced replacement. The recordings are devastating. Kevin's voice discussing Janet like she's a possession to be programmed rather than a child to be loved. His detailed plans for convincing Janet that her memories of me are fantasies created by psychological trauma. His clinical assessment of how long it will take to completely erase my influence from Janet's emotional development. Most damaging is a conversation where Kevin tells Carla, "Children are remarkably adaptable. Within 2 years, Janet won't remember what Jennifer actually looked like. She'll think of you as her real mother and Jennifer as the sick woman who abandoned her." Memory is surprisingly easy to manipulate when you control the narrative. As I prepare for the final custody hearing, my evidence file contains overwhelming proof of Kevin's systematic psychological abuse, medical fraud, and premeditated destruction of our family bonds. But more importantly, I have the professional credibility and expert allies necessary to present this evidence in ways that can't be dismissed or discredited. Kevin has spent 3 years planning to replace me. He never considered that his replacement might be someone far more dangerous than the woman he destroyed. Someone with the knowledge, credentials, and determination to expose his manipulation from the inside of the system he thought he controlled. The truth is finally ready to emerge, and Kevin's perfectly orchestrated plan is about to become his complete destruction. The final custody hearing takes place on a crisp October morning, exactly 1 year after Kevin served me with divorce papers at Janet's school. I enter the courtroom as Maria Gonzalez, carrying a briefcase filled with evidence that will destroy the man who thought he could erase me from existence. Kevin sits at the defendant's table with his new attorney. Robert Sterling withdrew from the case after the deposition disaster revealed his client's evidence fabrication. Kevin's replacement lawyer, James Murphy, looks overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence against his client and the growing list of criminal charges being prepared by the district attorney's office. Your Honor, Linda Torres begins her opening statement. The evidence will show that Dr. Kevin Walsh has engaged in systematic psychological abuse, medical fraud, and deliberate destruction of family bonds through surgical manipulation of multiple women over a period of several years. The prosecution presents Kevin's own emails describing his wife replacement protocol, and his clinical notes treating women like experimental subjects rather than human beings. The courtroom gasps audibly when Linda reads Kevin's message to Dr. Reed. Subject C shows optimal compliance following final modifications. Original model elimination proceeding on schedule. Child adaptation therapy yielding desired results. Judge Morrison's expression grows increasingly stern as she reviews the forensic evidence from Kevin's computer. Dr. Walsh, these communications suggest premeditated psychological abuse and conspiracy to manipulate custody proceedings through fabricated evidence. This court takes such allegations extremely seriously. Kevin's medical license suspension becomes permanent when 3 more former patients testify about unnecessary procedures he performed while documenting their transformations for his personal collection. Mrs. Helen Carter describes how Kevin convinced her that facial reconstruction would help her recover from her husband's death, then photographed her obsessively and made inappropriate comments about perfecting the grieving widow aesthetic. Dr. Walsh told me I was his masterpiece, Mrs. Carter testifies, tears streaming down her surgically altered face. He said he'd created the perfect version of feminine sorrow. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw other women in his waiting room who all had similar modifications, like he was collecting different variations of the same theme. The medical board's investigation reveals that Kevin's practice has generated over 40 malpractice complaints in the past 2 years, with a pattern of patients being pressured into procedures they didn't initially want and experiencing complications that required additional surgeries. His medical partners formally dissolved their practice association, and his hospital privileges are revoked permanently. Janet's therapy sessions with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a child psychologist I recommended who specializes in parental alienation recovery, yield breakthrough testimony about her experience living with Kevin and Carla. In a recorded session played for the court, Janet describes her daily life with devastating clarity. Daddy makes me practice saying I love Miss Carla, Janet's voice carries through the courtroom speakers. He times me with his phone to make sure I say it fast enough to sound real. But I don't love her because she doesn't smell like home and she doesn't know that I like my sandwiches cut in triangles, not rectangles. She tries to do everything like my real mommy, but she gets it wrong because she's copying instead of knowing. Dr. Martinez's analysis explains how Kevin's attempts to force bonding between Janet and Carla have actually created deeper psychological trauma. The child recognizes that she's being forced to accept an artificial maternal relationship while her authentic attachment to her biological mother is being systematically erased through psychological manipulation. When Carla takes the witness stand, her testimony demolishes any remaining sympathy the court might have had for Kevin's situation. She describes finding hidden cameras in their bedroom, discovering Kevin's detailed notes rating her performance as his ideal woman, and uncovering his plans for additional modifications to make her even more like his perfect fantasy. Dr. Walsh showed me comparison charts. Carla testifies, her voice stronger now than during my early investigations. My face measured against Jennifer's face, with detailed analysis of which features needed adjustment to achieve what he called optimal aesthetic integration. He talked about me like I was a sculpture he was still carving rather than a woman he loved. She produces recordings of Kevin discussing his timeline for eliminating my influence from Janet's life completely. His voice fills the courtroom as he describes children as remarkably programmable, and explains his methods for replacing Janet's authentic memories of me with manufactured stories about my mental instability and abandonment. The child will eventually forget what the original looked like, Kevin's recorded voice states matter-of-factly. Memory is surprisingly malleable when you control the narrative consistently over time. Within 3 years, she'll genuinely believe that Carla has always been her mother and that Jennifer was the unstable woman who abandoned her. Judge Morrison calls for a recess after Carla's testimony, and I request a private chamber meeting to reveal my true identity. Linda Torres accompanies me as I prepare to drop the final bombshell that will complete Kevin's destruction. Your Honor, I need to disclose something that will fundamentally change this case. I begin, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what I'm about to reveal. I am Jennifer Walsh. Maria Gonzalez is the identity I created to protect my daughter and gather evidence of my ex-husband's abuse from a position he couldn't attack or manipulate. Judge Morrison stares at me for a long moment, processing the implications. Ms. Walsh, you're claiming that you underwent complete identity transformation to investigate your own custody case? I present documentation of my transformation process, including Dr. Okafor's medical records, before and after photographs, and expert testimony about identity change as a survival strategy for abused women. Your Honor, staying as Jennifer Walsh meant certain defeat in Kevin's manipulated system. Becoming Maria Gonzalez gave me the professional credibility and investigative access necessary to expose his systematic abuse. Linda Torres presents character witnesses who testify to my competence and stability as Maria Gonzalez. Colleagues from Child Protective Services describe my exceptional work with other families, my specialized knowledge of professional manipulation tactics, and my unwavering commitment to child welfare. Judge Morrison reviews my professional accomplishments, including successful custody cases where I've protected children from manipulative parents. The evidence shows that far from indicating mental instability, Ms. Walsh's identity transformation demonstrates extraordinary planning, intelligence, and determination to protect her child, Judge Morrison states. Her success as Maria Gonzalez proves her psychological stability and professional competence. Kevin's final attorney makes a desperate attempt to portray my transformation as evidence of delusional behavior, but the argument collapses under the weight of my professional achievements and the systematic evidence I've gathered against Kevin's manipulation. When court reconvenes for the final ruling, Janet sits in the gallery with Dr. Martinez, unaware that the social worker who's been helping her is actually her transformed mother. Judge Morrison announces her decision with firm authority. Dr. Kevin Walsh is hereby stripped of all custody rights and parental privileges. The evidence demonstrates systematic psychological abuse, medical fraud, and deliberate manipulation of family court proceedings. Full custody is awarded to Jennifer Walsh, with supervised visitation only after completion of mandatory psychological treatment and anger management programs. Kevin's face crumbles as he realizes his perfect plan has backfired completely. The man who thought he could control women through surgical manipulation has been defeated by a woman who used his own tools against him. After the hearing, I kneel down in the courthouse hallway and tell Janet the truth about who I really am. My daughter studies my transformed face with the serious expression of a child who's learned to question everything, then reaches up to trace my new features with gentle fingers. You became someone strong enough to save me, she says simply. Like the princess in our bedtime stories who changes herself into a dragon to protect her kingdom. Janet understands what many adults cannot. That love sometimes requires transformation, that protection sometimes demands sacrifice, and that mothers will become anything necessary to save their children from harm. Kevin walks past us in handcuffs as police escort him from the courthouse to face criminal charges. He doesn't recognize the woman kneeling beside his daughter, doesn't realize that his greatest victory has become his complete destruction. 3 months later, Janet and I start our new life together. I maintain my identity as Maria Gonzalez professionally while slowly adjusting my appearance to honor both who I was and who I've become. Janet calls me Mommy Maria, sometimes, acknowledging both my original identity and my transformation. I like that you're still my mommy but also someone new, she tells me as we plant flowers in the garden of our apartment. A fresh start far from Kevin's controlled environment. It means we can have adventures together that we never had before. Kevin lost more than custody in his war against our family. He lost his medical license, his practice, his freedom, and his ability to manipulate anyone ever again. But Janet and I gained something precious. Proof that authentic love survives any transformation, and that sometimes the only way to save what matters most is to become someone your enemy never saw coming. If this story of a mother's fierce revenge had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Jennifer revealed her true identity as Maria Gonzalez in the courtroom, turning Kevin's manipulation against him. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.